Earthquakes are one of nature's most powerful and devastating forces. Sudden, violent shaking of the ground that can level cities in seconds, leaving unimaginable destruction and tragic loss of life in their wake. When you think about what causes earthquakes, what first comes to mind?
Oh, there are two causes. They are tectonic movements and fault motions.
Exactly. They are the two common causes for earthquake generation without any doubt. But actually, landslides can also be one of them.
Wait, what? Isn't it a consequence of the earthquake?
That's what most people think. But the relationship between landslides and earthquakes is actually more complicated than we thought. Before we dive into how landslides can trigger earthquakes, let's quickly understand the elastic rebound theory, the fundamental mechanism behind earthquakes. Imagine Earth's crust as being like the stick on the right, where rock layers correspond to the solid wood and faults resemble small cracks in its structure. Initially, both exist in perfect equilibrium, the rock layers undisturbed by tectonic forces, just as the stick remains straight when no pressure is applied. As tectonic forces begin to displace the rock layers, the situation becomes analogous to bending the stick. The gradual curvature you observe in the stick mirrors the elastic deformation occurring in underground rocks, both storing increasing amounts of potential energy without visible damage. This energy accumulation continues until the stress surpasses a critical threshold. At this breaking point, the rock suddenly ruptures along the fault plane, just as the stick ultimately fractures at its weakest point. The violent release of stored strain energy generates seismic waves, what we experience as an earthquake. You can observe this energy release in the stick's broken ends vibrating after snapping. With this foundation established, we can now investigate the fascinating relationship between landslides and earthquakes. The connection was revealed in a 2024 study titled Landslides Cascades Can Trigger Earthquakes, conducted by Professor Ten and his research team from the Department of Earth and Environmental Science at the CUHK. Their research focused on the Tibetan Plateau case study. By analyzing the correlation between earthquake activity and landslides, the paper established a previously unrecognized causal relationship between these geological phenomena. The research team's findings demonstrate a complete hazard cascade sequence. Initially, a river flowed undisturbed through a valley that lay directly above a geological fault. After a major landslide occurred, the resulting debris mass blocked its channel, creating a natural dam. Behind this barrier, water began accumulating, forming a growing landslide dam lake whose rising levels exerted increasing pressure on the underlying rock formations. As the lake approached its maximum capacity, these combined stresses reached a critical threshold, creating conditions where even minor tectonic adjustments could trigger seismic activity. This explains the observed peak in earthquake frequency during high water periods. The sequence culminated when overtopping waters catastrophically breached the dam, releasing devastating flash floods that abruptly redistributed regional stresses. Over time, the river gradually re-established its natural course through the eroded breach, completing the hazard cycle. The team identified two key mechanisms behind this phenomenon: the direct weight of the growing water mass, increased pore pressure caused by elevated fluid diffusion of the surrounding rock. This discovery reveals a two-way relationship between earthquakes and landslides. While we've long known that earthquakes can trigger landslides by destabilizing slopes, we now understand that the resulting landslide-dammed lakes can actually trigger subsequent earthquakes through these stress mechanisms. So, do you agree that landslides could be one of the causes now?
Yes, I never thought about such a relationship in between. But why do we need to know the relationship between landslides and earthquakes?
Understanding these complex interactions is critical for effective risk assessment in mountainous regions. By studying these relationships, we can better predict potential hazards and improve our disaster preparedness strategies, ultimately helping to protect vulnerable communities in these geologically active areas. The finding moves beyond academic significance. It represents critical insights for saving lives. While we can't stop natural forces, we can, and must, develop smarter ways to coexist with them.
We hope you found this exploration of landslide-triggered earthquakes as fascinating as we do. Thanks for watching and stay curious.